But one of the things that we find is, with target date funds, whenever since Congress enacted the 401k back in 1978, pensions have been offered less and less. I think that in 2010, 20% of the workforce had the ability, had access to a pension or a defined benefit plan, and that's dropped down to 15% as of the latest Bureau of Labor Statistics report that I read. So only 15% have access to a pension. So most people are looking at their employer-sponsored plan, and they're looking at a 401k or a defined contribution plan. And Trey, do you have the stats on that? How many people have access to one compared to how many people are actually participating in a 401k plan?
Yeah, so I do.
I think it's like 60 or 70% of people have access to one. And something like
50% are taking advantage of it. Yeah, I do think it's surprising, so 20% of people that have access are not taking advantage. I think one of the things that we do a really poor job of is educating people on when to start a 401k, how to use it. We meet with people all the time whose kids are 40 and they have never started adding money to a 401k. They haven't even opened it. And many of them somehow have missed the fact that their company actually does a match of 3, 4, 5, 6%.
Right.
And they're legitimately giving up free money. So, I think one of the things that you and I see often, Yelisey, is, almost every day a couple will say to me, or an individual will say, man, it'd be nice just to have a little more money in my 401k, or a little more money in my IRA, or a little bigger nest egg. And I think everybody feels that way, so there's not like an amount or a number that all of a sudden people feel secure. But going back to talking about the pension piece, one of the things I would say is the clients that we work with that are the happiest are those that have the most guaranteed income, whether it's Social Security and a pension from work, whether it's Social Security and real estate, whatever those things are. I think one of the things that we found is having guaranteed income for most people is what brings a lot of peace.
Yeah, for sure. And, as pensions kind of, have fallen by the wayside a little bit, employer-sponsored plans are not they're mostly filled, but most of them have some type of target fund or an age-based fund, or sometimes referred to as a life cycle fund. And I would say that, whenever we sit down with folks and they're looking at their investment options, especially as they're getting ready to retire, and we're exploring many more options than what are typically available within their 401k, a lot of times I'll ask, like, how did you end up with these investments? And the response we often get is, well, we were kind of told, just pick the fund that kind of coincides with your retirement date. If you think you're going to retire in 10 years, well, do the, 2035 life cycle fund, for instance. And a lot of that, there isn't really a whole lot of thought that goes into that. And the idea is you could just set it and forget it. This is all you need. And it's not exactly the right fund for everybody. And that's what I want to talk about, why there might be some major issues and major challenges with a target retirement fund compared to some of the customization that you would get when you work with somebody like us. Is there anything that you would add to that, Trey?
Well, I think one of the things that we see all the time is the fees. I can't tell you how many times in a month I'll say to a couple, do you know what you're paying for fees in your 401k or the 403b? And they'll say, oh yeah, on my statement it says, I pay whatever, $25 a quarter. And I'm like, no, that's an administrative fee. Like, there are so many hidden fees within a target account, like your expense ratios. There's the cost of the 401k. A lot of people don't realize that there's management fees that can impact your returns over time. And what most people don't realize, and if you're listening, you can Google this, but the average cost of a 401k is like 1.25% to 2% all in. And so we have all these people that think they're spending $100 to $200 a year, but it's because there's so many hidden costs that one of the things that we can do for families that we meet with is we can actually show you what is the true cost of your 401k. Every once in a while, we'll sit down with somebody who's the president of their company or a vice president, and their company will cover a quarter or half or maybe more of their fees. But for 95% of people, they're paying those fees. And there's nothing wrong with having a cost. People just don't realize what they are, and it should be transparent because it's your money. And so one of the things we can do is we can help kind of bring out what are the hidden costs, what are you paying, and not just what are your fees, but what is it costing you by being in a target account that doesn't have the customization that you'd have in an IRA or a Roth IRA outside of the 401k? How about as far as, Yelisey, you work very closely with the investment team. When we talk about limited investment control, touch on that for a moment if you would.
Yeah. So everybody kind of knows that, like, whenever you choose a target fund, that fund is going to shift over time. It's going to shift towards being more conservative as you get closer to that target date. And the challenge where you don't have a lot of customization is, what if you're somebody who just needs to have more growth? Like, there's some people who can afford to have a larger bond position because, they're set for retirement. But there's some people who, if they assume a larger bond position immediately, they're going to have no hope of providing like the type of returns that they might need to stay on track. And the worst thing is, like, what if you need to have more equity exposure or a different type of exposure within your account, but you have this target fund that's progressively getting closer and closer to being more conservative over time, and that's hampering your chances of actually getting to where you need to go. So that's where the customization is a little bit lacking. As far as the fees go, I would say, having looked at a number of target funds, there's different types, right? There's passively managed target funds, just like there's passively managed mutual funds. And those are typically pretty reasonable. There's also actively managed funds, and those can be quite expensive. So I would say, on the cost side, it's easy to mitigate that.